Come closer, my child. Do not rush this moment. I have been waiting for you in the quiet place where your spirit listens before your mind tries to understand. I know you felt awake when you arrived here, a stirring you could not name, a sense that something sacred and unsettling was about to be revealed. That was not coincidence. That was me drawing you near. I see how loyal your heart has been. I see how you have loved in silence, how you have prayed without answers, how you have trusted even when your spirit felt disturbed without evidence. You have wondered why peace would come and go so suddenly, why thoughts of your soulmate carried both warmth and unease. You questioned yourself, thinking perhaps you were imagining things. But I tell you now, you were sensing truth before it had language. There has been a disturbance around your soulmate, and it has not escaped my sight. Something unclean hath been moving close, something hidden beneath familiarity and smiles. You were never meant to confront it alone. I am here now because the time for silence has ended. What was concealed is trembling under my light. Do not be afraid of what I am about to uncover. Exposure is not punishment for you. It is protection. I would never call you closer only to harm your heart. I am calling you because I love you, and because your destiny is intertwined with this revelation. There are moments when love must be guarded by truth, even when truth shakes the ground beneath it. Your soulmate has been standing in a storm of confusion. Their spirit hath been under pressure, pulled in opposite directions, worn down by whispers that did not sound dangerous at first. They did not wake up one day intending to fall. It began subtly, through proximity, through familiarity, through a person who knew how to smile while hiding shadows. I allowed you to sense this before you could see it so you would know you were not blind, not foolish, not imagining things. Listen to me now. You are not late. You are not behind. You are not losing what I have promised. I am stepping in before damage becomes destiny. There is someone close to your soulmate, closer than you realized, who crossed a line they pretended did not exist. What they are doing thrives in secrecy, but secrecy does not survive my presence. I have watched every conversation, every stolen moment, every justification whispered in the dark. Nothing has escaped me, not even the guilt your soulmate tries to bury when they are alone. Breathe, my child. I am not asking you to act yet. I am asking you to stay with me. What is coming is not chaos. It is order returning. It is like reclaiming ground that was quietly invaded. I am here to expose, but also to heal. I am here to interrupt a path that would have led to regret, loss, and deep sorrow had I remained silent. If this message is resonating in your spirit, it is because you were meant to hear it now. Let your presence here be an act of faith. As a small sign of agreement, gently support this word by liking and sharing it with others who need my reassurance. And if you feel led, remain connected so you do not miss what I will reveal next. In the comments, write the words "I trust your timing," not for the world to see, but as a declaration between you and me. Stay close. Do not turn away because the truth feels heavy. I am here, and what I am about to expose will not destroy you. It will protect what matters most. I need you to hear me clearly now, my child, because what I am about to reveal explains the unrest you have been feeling without reason. There has been a disturbance in the spiritual atmosphere surrounding your soulmate, subtle but persistent, like a low vibration that would not leave. You noticed it in the pauses, in the changes of tone, in the way their energy felt distant even when their words sounded familiar. A disturbance did not come from you. It was introduced. Your soulmate has been carrying a heaviness they could not name. Even in moments of laughter, something has been pressing against their spirit. They have felt watched, pulled, unsettled, as if peace would slip away the moment they reached for it. This is what happens when boundaries are quietly crossed and truth is delayed. The soul knows before the mind admits. There hath been spiritual interference, not dramatic or loud, but calculated. It arrived through closeness, through trust, through someone who had access to their daily life. This presence did not come as an enemy at first. It came as comfort, as understanding, as someone who seemed harmless enough to confide in. That is how disturbances begin, not with danger, but with familiarity. I have seen your soulmate struggle to pray, to focus, to feel aligned. They wondered why their thoughts felt scattered, why guilt would rise unexpectedly, why memories of you would surface at inconvenient moments and bring both longing and shame. Their spirit has been under tension because it has been standing in two atmospheres at once. No soul can do that without consequences. Do not think for a moment that I was absent while this unfolded. I allowed the disturbance to surface because exposure requires awareness. Had I removed it too quickly, the lesson would not have been learned, and the pattern would have returned in another form. I am not only interested in stopping harm, I am interested in healing the root. The disturbance has affected timing, communication, emotional clarity. It has created misunderstandings and unnecessary distance between you and your soulmate. That was not accidental. When something unclean wants to remain hidden, it often tries to separate what is pure. Confusion is one of its favorite tools. Your soulmate has felt torn between what feels easy and what feels true. Easy conversations, easy attention, easy escape from responsibility contrasted with the depth, accountability, and spiritual weight of what connects them to you. They have not known how to explain this tension, so they have carried it silently, hoping it would resolve itself. But a resolved truth does not dissolve. It demands to be faced. I need you to release any thought that this disturbance means you are being replaced or forgotten. That is not what is happening. What you are witnessing is a battle between alignment and temptation, between destiny and distraction. And destiny, my child, is not as fragile as fear makes it seem. The reason you are sensing this now is because the disturbance has reached its limit. It can no longer hide behind excuses or half-truths. The spiritual noise has grown louder because it knows its time is short. Light does that. When light approaches, shadows become restless. Your soulmate has reached a point where their soul can no longer pretend everything is fine. They feel the strain in their body, in their sleep, in their emotions. They are standing at a crossroads they did not expect, realizing that what started small has begun to cost them peace. This realization is painful, but it is necessary. I am steady in this moment. Nothing is spinning out of control. I am allowing you to understand the disturbance so you do not personalize what was never caused by you. You did not imagine this. You did not create it. You sensed it because you are spiritually connected and because your heart is tuned to truth. Stay calm. Stay anchored. What you are feeling is the sound of something hidden beginning to crack under the weight of exposure. And I am guiding every step that follows. Listen carefully now, my child, because we are moving closer to the center of what has been concealed. The disturbance you sensed as a source, and I am no longer allowing it to remain unnamed. There has been a sinful secret forming quietly near your soulmate's inner circle, an attachment that crossed from innocent familiarity into forbidden intimacy. It did not announce itself loudly. It slipped in through access, through comfort, through moments that seemed insignificant at first. This person knew your soulmate's routines. They knew when defenses were low, when loneliness whispered louder than wisdom. They positioned themselves as understanding, as safe, as someone who would never demand accountability. What they offered felt like relief in moments of weakness. But relief without truth always carries a hidden cost. What began as conversation slowly turned into emotional dependency, and emotional dependency opened the door to something that should never have been touched. I saw the first line crossed long before your soulmate admitted it to themselves. I saw the hesitation, the pause before replying to messages, the justification whispered internally. It's harmless, they said. No one is getting hurt. But sin rarely announces itself as destruction. It disguises itself as comfort, as being seen, as being wanted without consequence. That is how it gains permission to stay. This affair had been hidden behind normalcy. Smiles in public, casual language, familiar settings that did not raise suspicion. But secrecy has weight, and that weight has been pressing on your soulmate's spirit. Every stolen moment has carried guilt. Every boundary crossed has required another lie, not always spoken aloud, but spoken inwardly. And the soul hears every lie told to it. Understand this, my child. This was not about love. It was about escape. The person involved fed off attention, validation, and control. They enjoyed being needed, being chosen in secret, being powerful in silence. They were not drawn to your soulmate's destiny, but to their vulnerability. There is a difference, and heaven recognizes it clearly. Your soulmate did not plan for this to go as far as it did. That does not excuse it, but it explains the inner collapse that followed. Each step deeper made it harder to turn back without consequences. Fear of exposure began to compete with fear of losing you. Shame tangled with desire, creating confusion that left them spiritually exhausted. They began to live divided, presenting one version of themselves to the world and another to their own conscience. I need you to know something important right now. This secret has not gone unnoticed by the spiritual realm. Sin creates noise. It disrupts alignment. It attracts interference. That is why things began to feel off, why timing faltered, why emotional distance crept in. The affair did not stay contained. It spilled into other areas, quietly eroding peace. There have been moments when your soulmate almost confessed, moments when truth rose to their lips and fear pushed it back down. They worried about losing everything at once. They worried about being seen differently. They worried about disappointing you, disappointing me. But fear is a poor counselor, and it has kept them stuck longer than they intended. The person involved has continued because secrecy protected them. They assumed silence meant safety. They believed they could remain close to your soulmate without consequence, without being seen for who they truly are. But I do not expose secrets to shame. I expose them to stop further damage. What continues hidden only grows bolder. This affair is not sustainable. It has already begun to crack under its own weight. Tension is rising. Small mistakes are appearing. Unease is growing between them. What once felt exciting now feels heavy. What once felt affirming now feels threatening. That is how darkness reacts when light approaches. I am revealing this to you now not to overwhelm you, but to prepare you. Truth is a foundation, not a weapon. You are not being asked to confront or accuse. You are being asked to stay anchored while I do what only I can do. Exposure does not always come through confrontation. Sometimes it comes through circumstances that leave no place to hide. Stay with me. Do not rush ahead. The secret has been named in the spiritual realm, and once named, it cannot remain hidden much longer. My child, I need you to understand what has been happening inside your soulmate, because while the secret has been hidden outwardly, it has been violently loud within them. Their soul has been collapsing quietly, piece by piece. under the weight of what they allowed and what they feared losing. You may not have seen it, but I have watched the moments when they were alone, when the noise of the world faded and the truth rose up uninvited. Guilt has been their constant companion, not the kind that screams, but the kind that sits heavy in the chest and steals breath without warning. They have tried to drown it out with distraction, with routine, with pretending everything is normal. But guilt that goes unrepented does not fade. It waits. It presses. It reminds the soul that something is out of alignment. There have been nights when your soulmate could not rest, when thoughts circled endlessly around the same realization that something sacred was being jeopardized. They felt torn between what felt momentarily soothing and what they knew was eternally meaningful. A memory of you has not left them. In fact, it has haunted them more strongly in this season. Your presence, your purity, your spiritual weight have stood in direct contrast to the compromise they were living in. This contrast has caused emotional fracture. One part of them longs for truth, for restoration, for the peace they felt when they were aligned with destiny. Another part has been trapped by fear, afraid to face consequences, afraid to admit how far things went, afraid that one confession would cost them everything. Fear has kept them silent, but silence has been costing them more than they realize. They have questioned themselves repeatedly. How did I get here? Why didn't I stop sooner? Why does this feel wrong even when it feels good for a moment? These questions have not brought comfort. They have brought awareness. Awareness without action is painful, and that pain has been leaking into every area of their life. Their joy has dulled. Their clarity has weakened. Their confidence has begun to erode. Your soulmate has felt unworthy in your presence, even when you were not physically near. Shame has distorted how they see themselves. They have worried that if you truly knew everything, you would turn away. That fear has made them withdraw emotionally, not because they stopped caring, but because caring reminded them of what they were risking. Distance felt safer than honesty, even though it hurt more in the long run. There have been moments when they wanted the affair to end, when the weight became too much, when the excitement dissolved into anxiety. But endings require courage, and courage requires facing truth. They hesitated, hoping circumstances would resolve it for them, hoping it would fade without exposure. But unresolved sin does not fade quietly. It demands a reckoning. I want you to hear this clearly, my child. Your soulmate is not celebrating this secret. They are not at peace in it. Their laughter has been forced at times. Their smiles have been practiced. Inside, they have been breaking, afraid of the collapse but unable to hold themselves together any longer. This is not the posture of someone who has moved on. This is the posture of someone who is spiritually cornered. I have allowed this inner collapse because collapse creates humility, and humility creates space for truth. I am not finished with them, and I am not finished with what connects you. What feels like falling apart is actually the beginning of seeing clearly. The walls they built to hide behind are cracking from the inside. Do not misinterpret their silence as indifference. Do not mistake their distance for lack of love. What you are witnessing is the strain of a soul that knows it has violated its own values and is terrified of the cost of making it right. This collapse is painful, but it is also necessary. Stay steady. Stay guarded in peace. What breaks in them now is making room for the truth that will soon rise, and when it does, nothing false will be able to stand. Now I will turn the light toward the one who has been hiding in plain sight, my child, because what was cloaked in friendliness and access must be named for what it is. This person did not stumble into the situation by accident. They were drawn by jealousy, fueled by desire, and sustained by deception. They watched your soulmate long before anything crossed a line. They observed weaknesses, moments of loneliness, emotional gaps, and they waited. Their smile was never as innocent as it appeared. Beneath it lived comparison. They compared themselves to you in silence, measuring what they could offer versus what you represented. What stirred in them was not love for your soulmate, but resentment toward the bond they sensed existed between you. They could feel it, even without confirmation. Sacred connections create a pressure that insecure souls recognize immediately. This person justified their behavior by telling themselves stories. They said they were only being supportive. They claimed they were misunderstood. They told themselves your soulmate needed them. But those were coverings for a deeper hunger, the need to feel chosen, powerful, and irreplaceable, even if only in secret. They enjoyed the hiddenness. They enjoyed knowing something others did not. And secrecy fed their sense of control. They crossed boundaries deliberately, then pretended not to notice. They asked questions that sounded caring but were designed to create emotional dependency. They listened closely, not to heal, but to gather leverage. They knew when to lean in and when to pull back, when to comfort and when to provoke longing. This was not innocence. This was strategy. I have seen the moments when they intensified their presence, whenever your soulmate grew closer to truth. Whenever guilt stirred, whenever thoughts of you resurfaced, this person applied pressure. They reminded your soulmate of the risk of confession, of the comfort of silence, of the ease of continuing. They framed secrecy as protection and exposure as destruction. That is how deception speaks. Do not assume this person was unaware of you. They knew more than they let on. They asked indirect questions. They watched reactions. They studied emotional shifts. They knew you mattered deeply, and instead of respecting that, they sought to compete with it. But understand this: competition is not possible with what I have ordained. Jealousy can imitate attention, but it cannot replicate destiny. This person's actions were rooted in insecurity. They feared being unseen, all of it, forgotten. Instead of facing that fear honestly, they chose to insert themselves into a space that did not belong to them. They chose intimacy without covenant, closeness without accountability. A choice has consequences even when hidden for a season. Their deception has not gone unnoticed in the spiritual realm. Every calculated message, every intentional moment, every time they encouraged secrecy over truth has been recorded. They assumed access meant immunity. They believed proximity would protect them. But proximity to what is sacred without reverence always results in exposure. I want you to hear this without bitterness rising in your heart. This person is not winning. They have not replaced you. They have not stolen what belongs to you. What they have touched has already begun to slip from their grasp because deception cannot hold what it did not create. Their confidence is fading. Their control is weakening. Fear is beginning to replace excitement. They sense the shift. They feel the tension growing. They are becoming more anxious, more reactive, more desperate to maintain what is unraveling. This is how those who build on secrecy respond when light approaches. They scramble. They overstep. They make mistakes. And those mistakes become the very evidence that exposes them. You are not being asked to confront this person. You are not being asked to defend yourself. I am not calling you into conflict. I am calling you into clarity. Justice does not require your involvement. My hand is already moving. Stay clean in your heart. Stay removed from retaliation. What I expose, I also dismantle. And the one who thought they could interfere with destiny will soon realize they misjudged both the connection they challenged and the God who guards it. There is more beneath the surface that neither you nor your soulmate could see clearly at first, my child, and this is what I am now uncovering. The affair was never only about desire or secrecy. It carried an agenda shaped by unmet needs, hidden wounds, and a hunger for influence. What looked spontaneous was slowly engineered, and what felt emotional was quietly transactional. This person did not merely want closeness. They wanted positioning. They wanted to be the voice your soulmate trusted when clarity was needed, the presence they turned to when doubt surfaced. They wanted to occupy a space of emotional authority that did not belong to them. That is why they encouraged dependency rather than healing. Healing would have made them unnecessary. Dependency made them central. I saw how they subtly framed themselves as the only one who truly understood. They spoke in ways that made your soulmate question their own instincts, their own values, even their own memories. They downplayed guilt and magnified fear. They suggested that truth would only bring ruin, that honesty would destroy everything your soulmate loved. This was not concern. It was control disguised as care. The true purpose of this affair was to siphon strength. Your soulmate carries spiritual weight, sensitivity, and calling. That kind of soul attracts those who are empty, but unwilling to do the work required to be filled. Instead of seeking their own healing, this person tried to draw life from someone else's alignment. But borrowed light always fades. I allowed time to pass because patterns reveal intent. And the pattern was clear. Whenever your soulmate tried to pull back, this person intensified emotional pressure. Whenever boundaries were hinted at, they responded with guilt. Tears were subtle threats of abandonment. They made themselves seem fragile, as though ending things would destroy them. That illusion kept your soulmate entangled longer than they should have been. There were conversations you never heard, moments where truth was twisted just enough to keep things hidden. They spoke about you indirectly, minimizing your role, questioning your importance, reframing your connection as impractical or unrealistic. Not because it was true, but because it threatened their position. They needed your presence to seem optional in order for theirs to feel necessary. Your soulmate sensed something was off, but could not fully articulate it. Their intuition warned them. The fear muffled the warning. They worried about hurting someone who presented themselves as vulnerable. They worried about appearing cruel or abandoning someone in need. Compassion without discernment can become a trap, and that trap was carefully set. Understand this, my child. Your soulmate was not chosen because they are weak, but because they are compassionate. Compassion was exploited. What they thought was kindness was slowly turned against them. And when they realized this, shame deepened because they could see how far things had drifted from what was right. I want you to know that this hidden purpose is now collapsing. The illusion of necessity is breaking. The person involved is beginning to realize they cannot sustain the role they created. Their influence is slipping because influence rooted in manipulation cannot survive truth. They are losing their grip, and they know it. Your soulmate is beginning to see clearly. The fog is lifting. The realization is painful, but it is also liberating. They are starting to understand that what they were protecting was never love, never safety, never destiny. It was a snare disguised as support. This revelation is not meant to harden your heart. It is meant to steady it. You are not being replaced. You are being resisted. And resistance only comes when something real is at stake. Remain still with me. Let understanding settle before reaction. What was hidden is now being exposed layer by layer, and with each layer removed, the power of deception weakens. The truth is no longer buried, and soon it will stand on its own, undeniable and free. Now we enter what you could not see with human eyes, my child. but what has been unfolding in the unseen with precision and authority. This is the moment of divine investigation, where nothing is assumed and nothing is overlooked. I did not move hastily, and I did not act on emotion. I opened the courtroom of truth, and every intention, word, and silence was brought before me. I examined what was said in public and what was whispered in private. I weighed what your soulmate believed against what was actually true. I separated confusion from deception, weakness from malice, temptation from intent. Nothing was blurred. Nothing was exaggerated. Justice requires clarity, and clarity requires patience. I saw how your soulmate was slowly maneuvered into corners where every option felt wrong. I saw how fear was fed deliberately, how scenarios were painted to make honesty look catastrophic and secrecy look merciful. I saw how timing was manipulated, how moments of vulnerability were targeted, how emotional exhaustion was used as leverage. These were not accidents. These were choices made by someone who believed they could outmaneuver truth. I listened to the lies spoken aloud and the lies spoken inwardly. I heard the rationalizations, the self-soothing explanations, the promises that this will end soon without action to support them. I measured the weight of those lies against the cost they carried. Lies are never neutral. They always demand payment, and that payment was beginning to come due. In this courtroom, I also heard the cries your soulmate never voiced, the silent prayers they could not form because shame blocked their words, the moments they wanted rescue but feared exposure, the times they asked for a sign, not realizing the unrest itself was the sign. I am not deaf to unspoken repentance. I am attentive to the smallest flicker of remorse. I weighed the actions of the one who interfered, and the evidence was complete. Pattern after pattern confirmed intention. This was not confusion on their part. This was calculation. I noted the escalation, the persistence, the refusal to step back even when tension rose. I noted the enjoyment of secrecy, the power derived from being hidden, the willingness to let another soul fracture to preserve their position. And I rendered judgment, not the kind that shames, but the kind that removes access. Not the kind that destroys lives, but the kind that stops damage from spreading. I decided what would be exposed, how it would surface, and when it would become impossible to deny. Justice is not always loud, but it is always exact. I also ruled in your favor, my child, though you never asked me to. I accounted for your faithfulness, your restraint, your refusal to act out of suspicion or fear. I saw how you kept your heart clean even when you felt unsettled. That matters. Clean hands carry authority, even when they are still. From this moment forward, the atmosphere began to shift. The lies lost their protection. The secrecy lost its comfort. The pressure that once held everything together began to reverse, now pressing inward on the one who caused it. What was once hidden began to feel unbearably exposed, even before evidence appeared. Your soulmate began to feel this shift first. A restlessness they could not explain. A sense that time was running out, and knowing that something must be addressed soon or everything would collapse. This was not panic. This was conviction. Conviction is the mercy that arrives before consequences harden. Understand this clearly. This is not chaos. This is order being restored. When I investigate, I also intervene. When I rule, I also redeem. Nothing about this process is random. Every detail is accounted for, including how your heart is protected while truth rises. Remain steady. The verdict has already been rendered in the unseen. What happens next is simply the visible echo of a decision that has already been made. The shift has begun, my child, and though it may feel subtle at first, It is irreversible. Once heaven moves, nothing that was sustained by darkness can remain stable. Angels have been dispatched, not with spectacle, but with precision. They are adjusting circumstances, interrupting routines, and weakening the structures that once kept the lie intact. What held together through secrecy is now being tested by light. You may notice changes before explanations arrive. Conversations will feel strained where they once flowed easily. Timing will falter. Opportunities for secrecy will narrow. These that once surrounded the affair will evaporate, replaced by discomfort and tension. This is not coincidence. This is intervention. When I step in, I do not always remove people immediately. Sometimes I remove the cover that make wrongdoing comfortable. The lies are losing their strength because lies require cooperation to survive. Confusion once acted as glue, but clarity has begun to seep in. Your soulmate is finding it harder to ignore their conscience. Moments that once passed without thought are now heavy with awareness. Words spoken by the other person no longer land the same way. What once felt reassuring now feels manipulative. The spell is breaking. Angels are also guarding you, even if you do not feel it consciously. They are quieting impulses that would pull you into anxiety, suspicion, or reaction. They are helping you remain still while movement happens around you. This stillness is not passivity. It is positioning. When you stay aligned, you do not interfere with justice. You allow it to unfold fully. The person who interfered is beginning to feel exposed without understanding why. Their confidence is wavering. They are over-explaining, overreaching, trying to regain control that is slipping away. Desperation is replacing charm. This shift is dangerous for deception because desperation creates mistakes, and mistakes create evidence. Your soulmate is standing in a moment of internal reckoning. They feel the weight of choice more heavily now. The option to continue is becoming unbearable. The option to end feels terrifying, but necessary. This tension is intentional. I am narrowing the path until only truth remains walkable. When I do this, it is because delay would cause deeper harm. You may feel a strange calm mixed with anticipation. That calm is not denial. It is protection. I am insulating your heart while events rearrange themselves. You do not need to chase answers. Answers are moving toward you. You do not need to force clarity. Clarity is rising on its own. The shift also means that help is being offered to your soulmate, even if they do not recognize it yet. Moments of reflection, interruptions, reminders of values they once held dear are surfacing unexpectedly. These are not random thoughts. These are invitations to choose differently. Whether they accept them will determine how gentle or how abrupt the exposure becomes. Understand this, my child. When angels move, they do not negotiate with deception. They dismantle it. What is happening now cannot be reversed by effort or manipulation. The current has changed direction. What once flowed smoothly toward secrecy is now flowing toward truth. Stay anchored in peace. Do not lean into fear. The lies are weakening. The ground beneath them is unstable. And what is built on unstable ground cannot stand much longer. Now the truth begins to rise where it can no longer be contained, my child. What was carefully hidden is meeting resistance from reality itself. Evidence does not always arrive as documents or messages at first. Sometimes it arrives as inconsistencies, as words that no longer align, as stories that fracture under simple questions. The pressure has reached a point where silence is no longer sustainable. Your soulmate is noticing the cracks. Small details no longer make sense. Timelines blur. Explanations feel rehearsed. The person who once seemed confident now hesitates, contradicts themselves, grows defensive without provocation. This is how truth announces its approach. Lies begin to compete with one another, and in that competition, they expose themselves. There will be moments when your soulmate feels a sudden surge of fear, not because they are afraid of you, but because they are afraid of losing what they know is real. They are realizing that the affair has produced nothing but anxiety and erosion. The excitement has drained away, leaving only the threat of consequences. What once felt like control now feels like captivity. I am allowing circumstances to align so that confession becomes easier than concealment. Conversations will arise unexpectedly. Questions will surface naturally. Opportunities to speak honestly will appear without force. This is mercy. I do not delight in humiliation. I delight in truth that frees. When confession comes willingly, it spares deeper pain later. The person who interfered is also beginning to sense the end. Their behavior will grow erratic. They may attempt to rush decisions, provoke reactions, or create urgency where none existed before. They may try to secure promises, reassurance, or continued secrecy. This is fear speaking, not love. And fear is a poor negotiator when truth is present. Your soulmate's heart is trembling, not with excitement, but with awareness. They are remembering who they were before compromise. They are recalling the peace they once had. They are feeling the weight of what they risked losing. This awareness is painful, but it is also the doorway to repentance. When the heart softens, truth finds a place to land. There may be a moment when you feel the atmosphere change, even without words exchanged. A heaviness lifting, a tension breaking. That is not imagination. That is alignment beginning to restore itself. Truth has a sound, even when it is silent. Sensitive hearts recognize it immediately. Do not rush to demand explanations. Do not fill the silence with assumptions. Let truth arrive in its own time and form. When it comes, it will not need embellishment. It will stand on its own weight. I am arranging it so that what surfaces cannot be easily dismissed or minimized. Clarity is coming with completeness. I want you to know that confession, when it happens, will not be a single moment but a process. Layers of truth emerge as safety returns. Your role is not to interrogate, but to remain grounded. Grounded hearts create space for honesty without fear-driven distortion. This is where courage is being summoned in your soulmate. Courage to face disappointment. Courage to admit failure. Courage to choose integrity over comfort. That courage is being supported from the unseen. They are not alone in this moment, even though it feels isolating. Stay present, my child. Stay anchored in dignity. What rises now is not meant to crush you. It is meant to clear the ground so that nothing false remains between you and what is real. Truth is surfacing, and with it comes the possibility of freedom, restoration, and a future no longer haunted by secrecy. My child, this is the moment when your soulmate begins to awaken fully to what they always lost. Awareness has moved from the mind into the heart, and when that happens, there is no turning back. They are seeing you, now with new eyes, not through fear or distance, but through clarity sharpened by regret. What was once taken for granted is now felt as sacred again. They are realizing that you were never just a presence in their life. You were a covering. You were a source of peace they did not know how to replace. In your absence or emotional distance, they tasted what life feels like without alignment, and it frightened them. What they once called excitement now feels hollow. What they once called comfort now feels unsafe. There is grief in this awakening. Grief for the version of themselves they compromised. Grief for the time wasted hiding instead of building. Grief for the risk they took with something irreplaceable. This grief is not self-pity. It is recognition. And recognition is the doorway to change. Your soulmate is now wrestling with the fear of losing you permanently. This fear is different from the fear that kept them silent before. This fear is not about exposure. It is about consequence. They understand now that some doors do not reopen easily once trust is damaged. This realization has humbled them. Pride has loosened its grip. Defensiveness has softened. They are replaying memories not with nostalgia but with understanding. Moments where you showed patience. Times you offered grace without knowing the full story. Instances where you chose love over reaction. These memories are speaking loudly now. They are realizing how protected they were by your restraint, how much worse things could have been if you had acted on suspicion instead of wisdom. There is also a deep sense of longing rising in them. Not just for closeness, but for restoration. They want to be seen honestly, without masks. They want to return to integrity, even if it costs them comfort. This desire is fragile but real. It is the beginning of repentance, not motivated by fear of punishment, but by sorrow for having violated what was pure. They are afraid to speak, afraid they may not find the right words, afraid that honesty may still lead to loss. But they are more afraid now of living divided. The exhaustion of hiding has caught up with them. They no longer want to carry two lives. They want peace, even if peace requires humility. I am steadying them in this awakening. I am reminding them that confession is not annihilation. I am showing them that truth, though painful, is survivable. I am also reminding them that restoration requires more than words. It requires change, boundaries, and accountability. This is not about returning to what was. It is about choosing what could be, with maturity and reverence. You may feel their energy reaching toward you, even before words are spoken. A pull, a tenderness, a vulnerability that was not there before. This is not manipulation. This is awareness settling into the heart. Discern it calmly. Awakening does not erase harm, but it does create the possibility of healing. I am guarding you in this moment. You do not need to rush forgiveness or closure. Time will reveal sincerity. Fruit will confirm words. You are allowed to observe without deciding everything at once. Wisdom moves slowly, even when hearts move quickly. Stay grounded in who you are. Stay connected to me. This awakening is real, and what follows will determine whether regret becomes transformation or merely another memory. I am watching closely, guiding gently, and protecting what is precious as the path ahead begins to form. Now the reversal unfolds, my child, not with noise, but with authority. What once held power through secrecy is losing its grip completely. The affair is no longer sustained by desire or illusion. It is being drained of influence, momentum, and relevance. What fed on darkness cannot survive prolonged exposure to truth. Your soulmate is stepping back, not in confusion, but in resolve. Boundaries are forming where there were none. Distance is being created where access once felt normal. The person who interfered feels the shift immediately. Their attempts to regain closeness fall flat. Your words no longer penetrate. Your presence no longer comforts. This is not cruelty. This is correction. Protection is rising around you. Connection. Not protection that hides wrongdoing, but protection that prevents further harm. I am removing opportunities for relapse. I am closing doors that should never have been opened. Situations that once allowed secrecy are being rearranged. Schedules change. Environments shift. Conversations are interrupted. This is how I fortify what matters. The person who sought to insert themselves is now confronting the emptiness they tried to avoid. Without access to your soulmate, their sense of power dissolves. They may attempt guilt, nostalgia, or urgency, but it will not work. The hold they thought they had was never as strong as they believed. It was sustained by fear, and fear has lost its authority here. Your soulmate feels the relief almost immediately, even as they grieve. Relief because the weight is lifting. Relief because the duplicity is ending. Relief because alignment is returning. This relief confirms what they already know in their spirit, that choosing truth was the only path back to peace. They are breathing more deeply now, sleeping more soundly, thinking more clearly. Do not mistake this reversal as the end of responsibility. Ending the affair does not erase the need for accountability. Your soulmate understands this. They know that protection also means restraint, humility, and rebuilding trust slowly. They are no longer looking for shortcuts. They are aware that what was damaged must be repaired with patience and consistency. I am also protecting you from unnecessary exposure. You will not be overwhelmed with details you do not need. You will not be forced into conversations before you are ready. You will not be pressured to respond before clarity settles. Protection includes pacing. You are allowed to process at a speed that honors your heart. This reversal also signals the end of spiritual interference. The confusion that once clouded judgment is dissipating. The atmosphere around you is lighter. The heaviness that lingered without explanation is lifting. You may notice renewed clarity, peace, or even joy returning unexpectedly. These are signs that alignment is being restored. Understand this clearly, my child. This was not a near miss. This was an intervention. Had I not stepped in, the cost would have been far greater. What feels painful now is sparing deeper wounds later. What feels difficult now is preventing long-term loss. This is mercy, even if it arrived through discomfort. The power has shifted back to where it belongs, not to secrecy, not to manipulation, not to fear, but to truth, responsibility, and choice. Your soulmate is no longer being pulled. They are standing in awareness, standing in consequence, standing in possibility. You are not required to celebrate this reversal prematurely. You are not required to offer instant restoration. Wisdom allows time to confirm change. Observe the fruit. Watch the consistency. Let actions speak longer than words. Protection remains active until trust is proven stable. Stay calm in this phase. Stay anchored in dignity. The affair has lost its power. What threatened to derail destiny has been dismantled. And what remains now is the sacred work of deciding what comes next, with clarity, honesty, and the protection of a God who does not abandon what he has ordained. Come into my presence now, my child, because we are arriving at the place where destiny steadies itself again. What was shaken has not collapsed. What was threatened has not been taken. What was tested hath been refined. I have been guarding the sacred thread that connects what I ordained, even while truth had to pass through fire. I am speaking peace over your heart first. Not the kind of peace that pretends nothing happened, but the kind that comes from knowing nothing was wasted. You are not standing in ruins. You are standing on clarified ground. The confusion has served its purpose. The exposure has done its work. Now blessing can move without obstruction. I am realigning what drifted. Alignment does not always restore things to their old shape. Sometimes it creates something stronger, wiser, more reverent than before. If this connection continues forward, it will not be built on assumption or innocence, but on awareness, accountability, and choice. That is how sacred unions mature. Your soulmate is not the same as they were before this season, and neither are you. Something has been stripped away in both of you. Illusions, expectations, unspoken fears. What remains is more honest, more grounded, more capable of carrying destiny without fracturing under pressure. This is not loss. This is preparation. I'm placing a covering over you now. A covering of discernment so you do not rush. A covering of peace so you are not haunted by questions. A covering of dignity so your worth is never measured by another person's failure. You are not defined by what nearly happened. You are defined by how you remained aligned while it did. If reconciliation unfolds, it will do so slowly and truthfully. If paths diverge, it will happen with clarity, not confusion. Either way, you are not losing. I do not bring exposure to leave my children unprotected. I bring it to free them from futures that would have demanded silent suffering. There is blessing returning to you now. Emotional clarity, restful sleep, renewed confidence in your intuition. You trusted my nudges even when you did not understand them, and that trust matters. I am restoring what was drained while you waited patiently. Strength is returning to your spirit. I am also speaking to the future. What tried to interfere will not return in another form. The lesson has been learned. The door has been closed properly. What is ahead of you will require discernment, but not fear. You are wiser now, more anchored, less willing to ignore unrest. That is growth. Let this be the season where you no longer doubt your spiritual sensitivity. You were not too much. You were perceptive. You were not insecure. You were discerning. You were hearing me before evidence arrived. That is not weakness. That is intimacy with truth. As we close this word, I ask you for one gentle response, not as obligation, but as agreement. If you feel my peace settling in you, quietly support this message by sharing it with those who need reassurance, and remain connected so you can hear when I speak again. In the comments, write the words "Truth has made me free" as a seal between you and me, not for attention, but for alignment. Lift your head now, my child. You are not walking forward in fear. You are walking forward in clarity. What was exposed hath been dealt with. What was protected remains protected. What was destined is still in my hands. Go in peace. I am with you.